Yeah, you can go straight up. Your main players get hurt. You never know. You can only do so much.
It's gotta be a long story about that.
That's like
Friday after work. Okay. It's called like 2 cats. It's recording. Go back.
You know what's a publication? Oh, you know, it's like, well, I can't go that far anymore. Is that the twins? Oh, no. Yep, it's called a rat.
Oh, you knew that. Yeah, the punishes you. That's part of it. I still work here. I haven't seen you in a while.
Hey, I haven't seen you either. Who are you?
Exactly.
You're on the other side of the building. I'm in the, I said, we have by my office almost every day.
Now you know all my dad jokes.
Your dad's really funny. I heard a couple on the way in and I was trying to remember so I could say them, but I already forgot. I know, it's so bad. It's like, on my computer, they were doing dad jokes. Oh, I got to tell them the machine. And I was like, okay, it's on. Sorry.
You could have lost.
Well, I have a natural one.
You know, games can be.
He used the same phrase that
The conversation I had with Adrian.
Happy to share.
The things you do, if they're going to impact you 6 months from right now, you need to stop.
I got bad news on that. So I already no, today. I really great conversation.
Shake out.
Oh, well, with those trouble, that's not what that's.
Before we begin, we want to share that we will be recording tonight's meeting. We do plan to share this recording publicly in the event that a parent, staff, or community member would like to know what was discussed. If you do not wish to be recorded, please let us know at this time. Thank you.
I think we'll back with the president.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to have a little modification to the agenda. We want to put, transition of staff. Number 2. All right, first thing we got is board recognition.
Well, I would love to start by telling Amber, congratulations on being Thank you. So excited to see you get that. So congratulations. And you will represent the community very well, I think. Oh, thank you.
I'll go ahead and follow up with kind of a continuation of appreciation of our building administration staff. I know that in my personal life, my husband taught, and he was also a building leader, and I know that there are so many stressors that go with that job, with that role, that takes you out of kind of that one-on-one that you get to work with kids, which is why you get into education in the first place, and you just take that bigger role when you're in the building, and I just want you to know, all of you, at OPS, Principal Ellen Wood and Vice Principal Albers, at PTR, Principal Johnson and Vice Principal Hill, at Orting Middle School, Principal Collins and Vice Principal McBride, and at Orting High School, Principal Freeze, and Principal Carlson. I thank you all for everything you do for our district and our kids.
I want to recognize, I want to say thanks to Bonnie. I'm glad you stayed. Looking forward to work with you, even a godsend for this. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you both to Ed and the principals for the examples of last meeting and since then of working with the community when they have concerns, listening to them, talking to them, and going the extra mile. I have on my walks Principal Christie actually cleaning the tables in the OPS cafeteria to help move it along and help on things in the cafeteria. I have seen Principal Jensen and the assistant principal out there helping with morning drop-off when I drop off my granddaughter, and going the extra mile to make sure that it's workable for us. And I also see, where's Bonnie? I've seen Marcy out there doing crossing guard duty. So I really appreciate everybody chipping in and helping during times when there's not enough people, and seeing those examples of us all working together for the kids. So thank you.
Like I said, we're going to move introduction of the new staff up a notch to get you guys home.
Good evening, I'm Debbie Christensen from Human Resources, and as mentioned at last board meeting, we have hired a number of new employees this year. So many so that with social distancing and such, we decided to bring them to you by introduction over 3 meetings. This is the second meeting of meeting our new staff, and we actually have 14 new staff with OPS and Orting Middle School. And some of them are able to make it tonight, and their administrators are here to introduce them. So we'll start with Orting Middle School. Christy Allen and Aaron Elvis. We have them stay where they are so that we maintain social distancing.
Thank you. Good evening. We're excited to introduce our new staff this evening. Some of them were able to be here, some of them are not. So I'm going to start with Priscilla Wright. So Priscilla, will you stand? We had the opportunity to hire Priscilla to teach our developmental preschool. And she has a Bachelor of Applied Science of Teaching from Pierce. So she comes to us with experience as a paraeducator and a preschool teacher from the Franklin Pierce School District. So we are so excited to have her join our team. Thanks, Priscilla. And then perfect timing, because our new secretary just stepped in, so Jenny, your job. And we had an opening, and Jenny came at a really interesting time. We hired her, joined our team as we were starting school, but oh, by the way, you don't have a desk, you don't have a phone, you don't have a computer. So we're thankful Jenny has stayed and did program running. But Jenny's son attends PCR. She moved here from Oregon and has a background in customer service. She comes from Les Schwab, so she's used to moving quickly and great customer service. So we very much appreciate having her.
I'm really excited to introduce to you two great hires that I'm happy to make. We have with Laura Shore, and she's here for you to stand up. She is one of our amazing monitors, super overqualified. I'm not even going to go into how much education she has right now, but she has 2 sons with us at OPS, and also is just, she's from San Diego, and loves Disney and Mount Rainier. Those are the 3 things that we talked about. Okay, we agreed. And she's fantastic. I hope you get a chance to talk with her soon. So congratulations. Thank you so much for coming. We also scored hiring of Stephanie McGee. She's a parent in our building as well, and she couldn't be here tonight, but she's amazing. So if you are able to stop by and you see a friendly face, super friendly, smiley face, it's probably her.
So 3 out of our 4 monitors are new. So Laura Stephanie and then Shelley McMaster is our third new monitor. She wasn't able to be here tonight. Our counselor is new, so Megan Margaret joined our team. And then last but not least, we hired a second grade teacher about 6 weeks into the school year, 5 weeks in, and so Tiffany Staley is teaching second grade.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we will hear from Kevin Collins, and I believe he's going to introduce his assistant principal and then
Right, thank you. Kevin Collins, principal at Orting Middle School. As a first-year principal, I could not be happier with our amazing staff, and the staff members I have the pleasure to introduce to you tonight have just been an amazing addition to our team. So I'll start with my counterpart, Earl Mcgregor. Earl comes to us from Franklin Pierce School District, where he spent 27 years in Franklin Pierce. Came up through the ranks as a para-educator and ended up as a math teacher and a coach, and most recently was the assistant principal at Keithley Middle. So he's got great middle school experience, he's having fun, loving our school, and we're just so happy to have him. So Earl McGregor. And then we have Kirsten Mccarl. Kirsten, we actually share with OHS. She is our new choir teacher, so very, very important member of our community. Replaces Jackie Backus, who was here for a very long time. But Kirsten comes with 22 years of experience from St. Vincent de Paul School in Federal Way. It's a K-8 Catholic school. And she's done lots of things, played in front of, or had her choir sing in front of Mariners games. And so we're just so honored to have her expertise and grateful to have Kirsten. So, welcome, Kirsten. Barbara Shukar is a para-educator with us in our life skills program. This is Barbara's first time working in schools, but she is actually currently in a bachelor's program in early childhood education and plans to become a teacher herself. She has students in the Orting School District and is an Orting grad herself. So we're very excited to have Barbara with us this year. And then finally, Jeff Scott. Jeff Scott also comes from Franklin Pierce School District. He and Earl were together at Keithley Middle. Jeff has 21 years of teaching experience. He told me 18 years at high school where he had physics, aerospace manufacturing, robotics, computer-aided drafting, algebra, and trigonometry. And the last 3 were at Keithley Middle where he was doing math, science, and algebra. So we have him doing math as well as one leadership class. He's just brought tons of enthusiasm to our school. So yeah, welcome, Jeff. And the staff who did not come tonight, we have Rebecca Hicken, who's a math teacher who actually was with us about 5 years ago as a science teacher, subbed, super reliable long-term sub for years in the district as a science teacher. And then Hannah Curtis is our LPN health technician, who's our nurse. So, welcome new staff, so honored to introduce you. Thank you.
That concludes our introductions.
Okay. Now we'll get into the meeting. You guys, you could stay or you could go ahead and go home.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming.
All right, we're back to the meeting.
High school.
step up to the mic, give me your first and last name. And you have it.
Good evening, how's it going? My name is Earl Mcgregor. I have a daughter in the school district here. As I stated on my paperwork and stuff when I wanted to speak, is more in regards to the presentation of the Orting School District on how they're presenting this to the teacher, to the parents. All right. As I come in here and the entire place is full, and there's only 9 seats available for parents, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, in my opinion. I don't know about yours, but when I only see 9 seats available for parents that want to speak, that is an opportunity to speak. You're at the school board, and you only do this once a month, that we're able to speak to you. When you crowd it with the people that's here, that's, yes, I 100%, thank you so much for hiring these great people, fantastic, I love it. I love it 100%. But when the parents can't be here, it hinders us from actually being able to speak our mind to the board. Okay? Secondary, I don't know how you're putting this out to everybody. The only way we see it is on the school board that, hey, we're having a meeting. I get an email from my teacher, from my daughter's teacher, every week, every other day as a matter of fact, about how she's doing, what's going on for that week, what they're learning, but we don't hear anything from the board. I think the emails were sent out more often, just to all the parents, even if it's a general, hey, we are having a school board meeting, we're talking about this, we would like you to join in. We want your opinion. But we don't see that. We don't see it. We don't see the board reaching out to the parents saying, hey, look, we know your kids are with us. We want your input. We want to know what we're doing right. We want to know what we're doing wrong, what we can do to fix it. And it's not there. It's not there. I'm sorry. I love Orting. I love this small community we have. It's great. It's fantastic. But we need more. We definitely need more. And that's pretty much all I got to say. We've got to communicate a lot more as parents to the school board, because these are our kids. Okay, these are our kids, not yours. I'm not saying that you don't have kids. I completely understand that you may have kids as well that are attending the school district, and I 100% agree. But we need the communication. As a parent yourself, you probably understand that you want to have that communication as well. You're on the board, so you know what's going on. We don't. We have no idea. So we want to understand what's going on in this curriculum. Okay? We really do. And that's why I'm here. I mean, I met Ed last time you guys had this. Ed, I met you and my wife. We were here. You sat down and talked to us, what I thought was fantastic. You didn't have to, but you did. My gosh, it was fantastic. I'm so glad you did that. I really am. But when it comes to these types of situations where you actually come out and speak and actually have it recorded, it makes more sense to have these seats filled with the parents that are actually with the kids attending your school. I mean, it just makes more sense.
Thank you.
That's all I got to say. And thank you very much for your time.
Any more, next thing on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Bonnie. We'll pull up something on the big screen that we'll be happy to share, just so you can see that a little bit of visual. Just a few highlights of the past month here. We'll give you some updates on some of the major work we've been discussing thus far. And we'll hear from our cabinet team shortly after that. Thank you, ma'am. So one of the first things I'd love to share is just we have a highlight with a press release of our partnership with a Recovery Cafe in Orting. As you know, providing social, emotional, behavior support has been an ongoing focus for us. And so with partnerships and grants, we're bringing drug alcohol support to our community, and they're providing real-time support in our schools for youth in need as well. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what that press release looked like in the last month. Looking at enrollment, no surprise, our facilities are full. So if we think about Orting Primary School, our permanent capacity sits at 288 students. When we say permanent capacity, that's students not in portables, in permanently constructed facilities. And we're at 472 total students, 466 what we call as FTE. That's what our funding is based on, full-time enrolled students, full-time equivalent. At Ptarmigan Ridge, our permanent capacity is 431 students, and we're sitting at 625 FTE. Looking at the middle level, our boarding middle permanent capacity is sitting at 689, and we're not quite full yet. We're sitting at 646 full-time equivalents. And the high school, the permanent capacity is 640, and we're sitting at 800. So we're continuing to see that trend during and while we're in COVID, where that secondary enrollment is starting to tick up. And altogether, we're sitting at 2,555 students. That's a little bit above budget, so that's the good news. What we are forecasting is still continued growth based on enrollment and growth around us. And so one of the pieces we will be working on this winter is our staffing and prototypical enrollment and thinking about the conversation coming up. What kinds of interventions, social, emotional, behavioral support, academic interventions do we need? Then how do we provide the right type of facilities for that? So that'll be an ongoing conversation for us in the spring into the winter. It is National Principals Month, and one of the things I appreciate about Mr. O'Neill back there is that he finds a way to get the communication out in ways that are digestible, quick, and he's capturing both student voice and staff voice. So on our bullying campaigns or highlights, you'll see photos and little quotes and ways to get interactive analytics, and he's tracking the data, trying to figure out who are we connecting with, where do we have misses in that communication, which is helpful for us to the gentleman's previous point about are we getting everybody in our school community, are we missing some? We do have National School Lunch last week. We had a couple staff members highlighted, again, that same kind of theme with photos and quotes so people can really connect to our staff, find out who we have. One of the pieces that we've been discussing is lunches, and we do have some challenges that we've been talking about. So to name a few, and we'll talk about some of the steps we've taken. We've had staffing shortages, just tied to quarantine and illness. We're sitting a few folks short in the last couple weeks. Debbie has been known to be serving meals. Cassie was working the lunch line at the high school, so we're trying to plug in where we can, but it's still not enough to go around to deal with that. Social distancing is still a constraint in that students without masks are expected to be 6 feet apart. And as I just shared, most of our facilities are over capacity already, and adding that constraint onto that presents a significant challenge. We still have an ongoing interest of cleaning facilities between groups coming in, as well as shared use of space. One of the challenges at PTR with one room that also houses our specialist staff, those kiddos need PE, and if they don't get PE, our teachers don't get planning, which is very hard as a constraint. So we're trying to manage all these pieces. There's still ongoing food and supply shortages. With regard to meal access, this is a huge celebration, also a challenge. We're serving about 5 to 6 times more breakfasts than we've had pre-COVID. So historically we served 15 to 20, and we're still in about 125 to 150 or so breakfasts in the morning. And our lunch access has increased by about 50% in some cases. Cassie remarked the other day when I was at high school, there were over 340 lunches served, which is up for them. As well as we're trying to, as you know, increase our meal choice and scratch-based cooking. So we're trying to provide quality meals. So that's kind of the constraints of what's happening. We did dig into each of our sites. Cabinet was present, our leaders were there, trying to figure out how do we get more sit time. Ideally, we'd love to have about 20 minutes of sit time for lunch for a student to have their meal and time to digest. And a few things are happening just to bring to your attention. We are sending proactive communication at Ptarmigan Ridge. Alicia's crafted some information with really a couple-fold that highlights what challenges were, not challenges we're experiencing, but what kind of corrective actions we're making. On the one hand, we want to have our parents be partners to help have that conversation if you need more time to eat. We don't want you to stop eating or put your food aside and go out to recess. We want you to stay and continue to eat all of your meals. So we're asking for parents' support in that, as well as that consistent messaging in our lunchrooms to make sure that our monitors and folks in the lunchroom know and are looking for students that may need more time. We want to make sure they have that full time. We're adjusting the lunch line structure, so while a group is getting ready to line up and exit, a new group will be coming in and lining up, so there's not that delay. We're also moving to scanners. Alicia's office team is building these barcode systems, which will go with students so they can just scan and not have to key or code or ask students for names and numbers. That'll speed things up. This week, Cassie's providing training on how to move, enter, and exit through those lines on a quicker pace. And all of that up, we think we can get probably up to about 12 more minutes of sit time at Ptarmigan Ridge, which should alleviate most of the concerns we've talked about. So we'll be monitoring over the next week and a half, to see if that's really making the impact that we want to see, and we'll report back our progress to you. So that's kind of how we're tackling it. We think OMS, we're not really ready to stop the split just yet, because with social distancing constraints, if we bring in all those kiddos in the lunchroom at the same time, we'll be quarantining at a much greater degree, and we're already quarantined about a third of our students this far in the year. And as you know, quarantine brings lost instructional time. Mr. Willis is working feverishly to bring us a test-to-stay program, which will dramatically shorten the length of quarantine. And we're a week and a half or so away. He's got just about all the nuts and bolts figured out, and we will be communicating to families as soon as we're up and running. But until we get to some of those pieces, it would not be in our best interest to totally pack our lunchrooms in light of the need for masks off and further constraints. So part of our plan will be ongoing communication at all of our schools and solve some of the aforementioned challenges about making sure we have adequate staffing. Cassie's been reviewing with Debbie what we have and looking at our new normal and how many meals we're serving, and they're trying to find ways to add more staffing, which is a challenge because we're short lots of places. But we'll keep that good fight going and continue to report to you our progress in that regard. With regard to walkthroughs, I am very pleased with what I'm seeing in our classrooms. Those are just a couple of pictures of the learning targets, and that gives you some insights in terms of what our students are experiencing in the classroom, so I thought that would be helpful. When we go into classrooms, I walk through with principals and assistant principals, and we're looking through the lens of a few questions. We're trying to analyze the standard being taught. So are we really at grade level? And if so, are we at the right level of rigor that the standards are calling for? We look for ways that our teachers are interacting with the students, helping to sense make around that content, and how are they assessing? How are we making sure each of our children are getting that essential learning? And just from what I've seen, they are working incredibly hard, specialists side by side, providing real-time support and interventions. And we are in every school every week, walking our halls and walking classrooms. So with regard to what I'm seeing thus far, I'm very proud of our team. With regard to the strategic plan update, so we just wrapped up collecting feedback. We were at middle school, high school. We probably talked with, I'd say, about 150 students total, and 100, maybe 20, 13 or so responses that varied. But trying to collect feedback from our stakeholders about where do they see the vision of the Orting School District heading in the next 3 to 5 years, which should help to inform us based on that feedback, language around mission and vision. And then, where do we see our strengths? We want to build some kind of strategic plan and measures through our strengths. Over and over again, we heard from our students about support, relationship, care, the sense of community. They really appreciated the fact that in spite of the pandemic, we haven't let go of traditions like homecoming, and really trying to focus on building inclusive, equitable environments. In that also, though, we get feedback. How can we improve? And harassment, intimidation, and bullying, and making our schools safe and welcoming and inviting for all of our students. Providing academic support, social, emotional support, behavioral support. Our middle school students really referenced increased athletic opportunities, activities. So we really have, I think, a good handle from our stakeholder feedback about what's really working well, where they'd like to see us go, how can we improve. And part of what we're doing right now is digesting that feedback so that we can bring some recommendations to you about draft language around mission, vision, and what our strategic values might be. And if we're hitting the mark there, then part of our work as cabinet is to begin to build strategic goals and measures so that we report to you and our community about our progress towards attaining those goals. So things are moving forward very well. We're also doing cabinet visits with each of our leaders where we're diving into where do you see the teaching and learning going in your school? What is your plan and what does your vision look like? How are you communicating with your staff and stakeholders? As well as how are you supporting your culture? What do you need? What kind of help and support? So we're wrapping our brains around their experience and trying to make sure that we're providing the best proactive support that we can. So the conversations are ongoing now with our leaders in cabinet over the next week. Last week I thought was a tremendous highlight for us with our Citizens Facility Advisory Committee. There they wrestled with long-term visioning and planning for our district, looking at the needs of our district through the lens of where we see our enrollment going, where we see our neighborhoods going, where we see our bond and assessed valuation capacity, what can we afford to do. And then based on their tours of each of our sites, we use their feedback to craft different ideas about what can we do, what we can expand and grow upon. And so that's just a piece of this game board that they interacted with to help provide their thinking at the table, to see where we might go. They worked in small groups to come up with that. Next Tuesday, we come back together with that CPAC committee, and we're going to piece all of that feedback together and look at where the consensus is. And then we're going to get a final pulse from community members so they can provide you with some feedback about where did they see the best rationale, the strongest language for why this, why now. And that, based on your direction, will help provide some, I think, language and clarity for a future bond committee about the rationale of why. What should we tackle first and why? And then based on what you see and hear and digest and the direction you set, and I know our students will be happy to join on that because they were interested in facilities too, then we'll set a plan moving forward in a time frame which will inform where we're going. This is another piece of what Mr. O'Neill is trying to do when we capture voice, right? We know student voice, staff voice is very important, as well as our community. And that's just a post for National Bullying Prevention Month, but gives you an idea of how we're not only bringing awareness to the issue, but we're tackling it through the lens and the eyes of our staff and our children. And I couldn't be more thrilled. That's the kind of communication that I'd like to see. It personalizes our work as a system and helps to keep people connected with where we're going. National Honor Society, they were out cleaning up river and just pulling all kinds of muck and gunk out. And we put a little shout out social media for them. That was excellent, well done. Part of your consideration as a board might be what role does community service, community involvement play during students' time here? And where do we see opportunities, whether it's sports or clubs, to get involved and to make a difference? And just lastly, part of the community is just having opportunities to bring us together. And next week is our rescheduled homecoming week. We had to postpone it, and the interest behind postponing was to ensure that all of our students, as best as we can maximize that opportunity to participate. Next Wednesday, we will have a homecoming parade where they'll gather at Orting Middle School, then ride through town. We'll have class Olympics. Mr. Parker says one of my fondest memories is watching him engage with students and conduct that. That'll be held after the parade. We have an assembly for students only Thursday morning. Homecoming game, that's Thursday night. We are, and you are more than invited aboard, doing a volunteer barbecue at 5 o'clock. Mr. Neeland, who did our barbecue in the summer, he's going to come back and cook some barbecue chicken, and I will tell you, it rivals Texas chicken. I told that to Mr. Rashad earlier, and he's like, I don't know about that. But we will have some chicken and say thank you to everybody's hard work, that culture of appreciation. And then our Friday Night Lights activity will be for students. Leadership is creating those activities to get students involved. That's 6 o'clock at Cardinal Stadium. So it should be a great week next week as we celebrate who we are. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Heather, because I'm massively on the work. And I just went on each section, but selfishly, Bonnie, any chance you could put one of the activities on our calendar?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't want to miss anything.
Yes, absolutely.
So I appreciate that. Also, just one more comment. When we talked about the student voice in the strategic planning work, I had envisioned maybe some small groups, but the fact that we're 150 students is very impressive. And I just want to give a shout out to the students who participated in conversations and surveys. Their voice in this plan is extremely important. So thank you for getting so many kids involved.
Welcome.
And I'm glad you brought up next week's CPAC meeting. I hope that we will be able to say thank you for all the community members that have stayed with us for that. Been on a lot of long-term planning committees, and we have the most community involvement that I've ever seen on any of those. So, yeah, I really want to thank the community for sticking with us on that.
We are blessed to have wonderful support. One of the pieces that you will have is the opportunity to say thank you, and your team is helping to create some certificates of appreciation for people's hard work in that process.
Great.
So we'll have some things ready to go for Tuesday. Definitely.
Reports?
So here we have our three-person instructional team together. They represent leadership through all of our intervention systems, core, intervention, special services, and they're going to share a little bit about how we're thinking about guaranteed viable curriculum. And they're going to help you see how does that kind of idea nest, and how can we move forward instructionally. I will say the number one item in all of our feedback with regard to strategic planning was helping to improve core instruction and outcomes for students, as well it should. That is why we are here. That's our mission. So they're going to give you some insights in terms of how do we think that that looks through what happens day to day in core, what does that look like through the lens of intervention, additive supports that students might need. One of the ways that we want to think about equity is thinking through that individual child's lens. So what does each of our students need in order to be successful, and how are we as a system recognizing that, paying attention to that, responding to that in a timely manner from not only the early learning stage, but all the way up through and post-graduation. So they'll share some insights in terms of what does that look like through their lens, which will give you some insights in terms of what our strategic plan might begin to look like and sound like.
That's one of the best introductions I think I've ever had. So if you've never planned for us, I think we should take a seat.
Good.
First of all, I want to say thank you. I know we were supposed to do this a couple of weeks ago, and my daughter had her senior night, and I would be remiss unless I said thank you from her for bringing this to today. I was able to be there, and I got to tell you, a couple of years ago, I would have never asked, but we built a culture here in Orting where I went ahead and I felt comfortable saying, hey, Ed, what do you think about? And he's like, we'll figure it out. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And my daughter Tammy loves you. Tears when I showed up, so just thank you very, very much for that. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about really our work that's going to probably take us years to really do. So it'd be great to say that we get this done today. However, I'm just going to be real with you. It's work that's going to take us probably 5+ years to really get to a place where we can say, oh my gosh, just stand back and celebrate everything about it. But I think we have small celebrations to talk about so far, and also small celebrations to talk about the past as well. So George Kuros came and opened up their district days for us. I'd be remiss unless I came back to that. George Kuros really talks a lot about the difference between school and learning. School is something that was set up 100 years ago, where kids showed up and the expert would speak to them. And the hope was that kids learned everything that that teacher said, right? And so the hope is not a great plan to have when it comes to kids. It's also not a great plan when you consider that the world's becoming more and more complex, and we're also facing a pandemic right now. And so really we have to think more on what's learning about, and what are we going to do to support that learning. And if you look at that right-hand side, on the bottom there, it talks about Sylvia Duckworth, who talks a lot about grit and perseverance, which definitely aligns to really our plan around student agency. I'll put that out. So, our keystone is really about multi-tiered systems of support, which, as long as I've been in education, I've heard about this. I've been in education for 29 years, but I'll tell you one thing about our teachers in 29 years. I've never seen better instruction than I have this year. I came to Orting 11, 12 years ago with Ed, and instruction is so much better now, but I think the need for kids to have extra help, individualization has never been higher. So we have to think about how do we actually help kids out, how do we get them to learn in a way that's important for them and move them forward. And so our keystone is really about how do we adjust things for kids. And the keystone, if you don't know what that is, it's that big stone in the middle. And if you pull that stone out, what happens? Everything falls down, right? So there's elements of multi-tiered systems of support, and these elements all work together. Without one of these elements, the whole thing will fall apart. And you also have to consider that all of these elements existed prior to me coming here, Ed coming here. There's been really good work around these things. The thing that's been missing in our system is really tying all these things together. And so tonight we're going to talk about, break each one of these down, we're going to take turns, and we're going to talk about each one of these things. Feel free to ask us questions.
First on the list that we want to talk about is guaranteed viable curriculum. Ed mentioned that a little bit. And the way that we structured this is to put it under the umbrella. It doesn't stand alone on its own. It is one of the aspects of, we're talking about every student every day. And what Aaron has said about the needs that kids have. We recognize there has to be multiple layers of support for them. And guaranteed viable curriculum is one of those areas. And we've discussed and worked on guaranteed viable curriculum in this district for probably 3 of the last 5 years I've been here. And we've made some progress with it, but our current progress right now and what we have, the products that we have right now are really insufficient to kind of close the gaps that we need for kids. There's many benefactors of this work that we get this work moving forward. It helps principals as instructional leaders so that they know exactly what they're looking for when they go into the classroom. Any of the teachers that are new to our system, they don't have to spend the time trying to figure out and guess about the what. They get to really focus their time and energy on the how, and that's true for all our teachers. PLCs, when they get together, we want them to spend less time trying to determine what the what is for next week and spend more time looking at what kids did this week and what does that actually mean for the instruction for next week. And ultimately, it's kids that are the benefactors of this because it won't matter which teacher they have. What's guaranteed to be essential and provided as our promise to them, every single teacher will be providing that. So it's really pretty important. When we talk about guaranteed and viable, just by way of reminder, guaranteed means just that this is the promise that we're making to kids at each grade level, regardless of which school they're in, and regardless of which teacher that they have. The viable part is that it actually works itself out through the course of the school year. That when we decide we need to get kids to by the end of the school year, we get them there. Now, understanding that this is work that the district office is kind of facilitating work, this is very teacher-driven work. The teachers are the ones that actually make those kind of decisions on what's guaranteed, as well as when the work is being done during the course of the year, they make the decisions on what's viable. We've kind of identified these 4 big chunks of what guaranteed and viable curriculum are. And if we look at them, one of the elements is essential standards. And when we want to talk about the essential standards, we want to talk about starting with the end in mind. What does it mean for a 3rd grader to be ready for 4th grade? We start with that understanding and then we work our way backwards. Okay, what needs to happen this year? What are the standards and in what sequence and at what depth do we need to get those 3rd graders ready for 4th grade? This instructional progression that we create becomes the foundation for all the decisions around the curriculum material and the instruction. So it helps us decide what curriculum and which parts of the curriculum and in what sequence that curriculum is taught. And then what are some of the strong pedagogical strategies, instructional strategies that we want to use to get us there? Performance criteria asks the question of what kind of rigor is this supposed to be? What are kids supposed to be expected to do and at what level? And so this helps us ensure that we've got the appropriate rigor based on the grade level standards in both the tasks that we're giving the kids as well as the assessments. And the learner-driven implementation, the guaranteed process does involve a pacing guide so that we try to make sure that where we start, we're going to end where we want to end. What tends to happen without that pacing guide is at the beginning of the year, you feel like you have a lot of time. And so things can start to get slowed down and we can get bogged down. And then the last 3 or 4 weeks of school, you covered a month and a half or 2 months worth in just a couple of weeks. And the problem beyond what's obvious about that is oftentimes the work that we're doing at the end of the grade level is some of the most critical work for the next grade level. So a lot of times we push ourselves through that because we're in a big rush. And then those kids come into the next grade level with some gaps. And so what does the next grade level do? They start backwards and then to try to get them caught up. And that is a never-ending merry-go-round that we would like to stop. Having said that pacing guide is in there, learner-driven implementation it's still driven by the kids. So the kids' needs are the ones that drive really actually the pacing, which affects the viability. Teachers are going to have to adjust that. But that learner-driven needs for extra time and support triggers all kinds of other supports that Aaron's going to talk about here in a little bit. The ongoing support part of this, we've got first principals and teachers for training, time, building trust in the process within our system. And our students, we take them where they're at and we move them to where they need to be, and we figure all that out together and try to provide the support for the people that are doing that work. In terms of actually playing this out, Aaron and I are taking on K-5 literacy and math. And we've identified 2 K-5 literacy and math GBC teams. And these are kind of teacher leaders within the grade levels that are going to do some of the work that's really been left to the PLCs up to this point. PLCs are using most of their time right now planning for next week because of the absence of this work that's there. We need to get them to use some of their time for looking at student results, student work, making decisions about what instruction is working and what instruction isn't working, leaning towards that instruction that's more effective, and identifying kids for supports so that we can kind of keep moving through there. So if we can get some of this curriculum mapping work done with this team, and then it's vetted and tuned and made viable by the rest of the team, that should free us up some time in PLCs to do some of this really important work of looking at student work. We're starting with the literacy team, and they have two primary responsibilities. They're going to be doing some of this curriculum mapping for us in ELA and literacy so that we free those PLCs up for time looking at student work. But then they're also going to be involved in our ELA, our K-5 ELA and literacy curriculum adoption, which we'll be bringing to you no later than May. A recommendation from this team that goes through the instruction materials committee. Probably about May, we'll be bringing a recommendation for a K-5 elementary ELA curriculum. Our math team at this point, they're just going to be doing the curriculum mapping part of this, so that again frees the PLCs up from that work. And then that cycle for ELA, or for elementary math curriculum adoption, will be the following year. So we're kind of in a 2-year cycle. So they'll just have that part right there, and then we'll go from there. And then in terms of the academic learning, this is really interesting where we are right now when we think about intervention and work and recovery learning and all this kind of stuff. We're trying to find out where kids are at right now and decide how we're going to get kids up, get kids caught up without going backwards. That's the real challenge that we have. So that's a significant challenge we have. Well, part of the good news is most of the kids are behind. So what that means is really it's a core instruction issue. So we do have the intervention as a piece of that, but what we're really pressing into right now is that core instruction piece, really trying to identify where those kids are at, get them at grade level, fill those holes where we can fill those holes, and move them forward. And so these are the two pieces there. So I'll turn the next piece over to Chris.
So to reorient you to the multi-tiered systems of support, remember your tier 1 is about 80% of your kids, which basically we're all kids receive in the core curriculum, not only for academic curriculum, but also core social emotional learning curriculum. Tier 2 is really the identified students who need intervention in special education, as well as an Untitled Lab program, or bilingual program. And then tier three is really most about students who receive highly focused interventions, which honestly require collaboration with outside agencies. And so I want to bring us back to that because it's really important to know that in order for MTSS to work, it not only includes academic support, but also social emotional learning support, and it brings it all together under one, we'll call it one keystone or one pyramid of work. So some of the things that we're doing in social emotional learning, which is this part, is that at the elementary level, we currently have a scope and sequence utilizing second step curriculum. Now, please understand that just teaching social emotional learning is not just about having a lesson. It's about living it. It's about having them in school, having them follow the rules in school, having them follow the norms in school, having the teachers consistently and other students focus on social emotional learning throughout the entire day. So when people think about social emotional learning, it's not just a one-time 30-minute in the morning and we've done our work. It's about constantly reinforcing that through the school day. And there are actually six standards that Washington identified as their social emotional learning standards, and our curriculum and the way we think about social emotional learning at the elementary actually preschool through 5th grade are all aligned to that. Now you're asking the question in regards to 6 through 12. We currently don't have a curriculum or a focus. Now, focus is there, but we currently don't have a scope and sequence at the 6th through 8 and 6 through 12. That's something that we'll be working on together this coming school year. In regards to the social emotional learning and behavior, which is the next part, my focus honestly has been, in regards to that, has been around the tier 3 work. And so that includes the trauma-informed practices and community mental health support. For those of you who don't know, we currently have an MOU with 3 mental health agencies. Most recently, Comprehensive Life Resources. Comprehensive Life Resources in the Orting School District received a grant from Pierce County. A small little tax for behavioral health. Well, we got a piece of that. And so we're able to provide 2.5 days a week of mental health support for our students, social emotionally as well as behaviorally. We also, like Ed said, was talking about in regards to substance use prevention specialist. She started last week. She'll be working both in the middle school and the high school, and is also working with the Post-Op Coalition. This weekend, we also have a drug take-back day, and so we'll be in front of the pharmacy downtown with a little banner for folks to bring back, and they get a free donut. So if they bring back any medications that they have laying around their home. And that's one of the preventative strategies we're using in the Orting community. We also had an opportunity to talk in front of the city council this week, last week, regarding our initiative, and we'll be meeting with their one of their committees, regarding some of the work we'll be doing in this community. We also, as you know, we also have a threat assessment cooperative that we belong to, in order to support our learners. Now, people go, oh my gosh, you're assessed. Well, actually, the process has worked very well in providing the needed supports for our students who are really struggling to learn in our community. In addition, we're also talking, and Kathy's been part of our attendance community engagement board. It's no longer called Community Truancy Board. It's Community Engagement Board. It doesn't really make a difference in regards to it, but that's what they did. And that will be supporting students, again, tier 3. Tier 3 around making sure that students are engaged. Now, the important part is to really reinforce all the students for coming to school, as well as in-building attendance support teams to help support those learners. And finally, in regards to behavior, one of the things that we also have as part of to support our students too, and again, we're talking tier 3 and tier 2. We have on contract a applied behavior analyst working with all our staff regarding consultation and training. She's provided training at multiple levels to help support all of our teachers for students who may be struggling with learning the new norms about being in school. And we also have for specific students a contract and a working relationship with Maximum Healthcare and Hopeful Hands to help a very small number of students. So you can see in tier 1, yes?
Sorry to interrupt, but is she working on the consultant, is she working individually with teachers when they have a specific student that support?
So she does it on 2 different levels. She'll do it with the entire staff about general things regarding behavioral support. Then she'll work with individual teachers regarding individual students with that. And she's also spent a lot of time working with us on assessing behavior and then coming up with behavior support plans for each of our kids. And so she, I've been working with her the last 4 years. It's Behavior Bridges, and they've been working with us the last 4 years since I've been here. So it's been a really, honestly, a very positive. And she is very busy this year. I just want to be real quick. Last year, the year before, because of the pandemic, things like her Tuesdays are packed. And so, well, we're supporting teachers, we're supporting students, and then we also support families as well. And we have, she also works with the families to help them in their homes as well.
Yeah, good.
All right. Anyway, do you have any questions? All right. I think we're good.
Well, it's a couple more sections we have to get to.
I think I'm good.
You might. What I was going to say is that the amazing work these guys have done in the last few years, like I gotta say, that just listening to Chris, I'm in awe of the things that he does and the balls he keeps up in the air. It is absolutely impressive. And Steve has done a great job, really, with Guaranteed Bible Curriculum up to this point. It's great to be part of this team. I'm humbled by that, except for the fact you're gonna cut me off, but that's all right. So obviously, there's been a lot of great things that have happened in Orting. I gotta say, I'm so happy to be back here. I would say the one thing that has been missing is really the coordination of all these great things that are happening. And the coordination is really an element of MTSS that we're gonna be really emphasizing this year. And one thing I'll say about Ed is that he's been very good about encouraging us to think about strength-based. So when we meet with principals, we talk about what's going well. There's a lot going well there. And I'll say that there's elements of this coordinated support. And the assessment that I've done in each building is sat down with each principal group and said, so how's the system actually work? What results are you getting from that? So those are two big questions that we're looking at. So with this, and I bet you didn't know, maybe Chris gave it away earlier, is that all these things are make up a big umbrella. And this big umbrella is probably, well, familiar with, you look underneath there. MTSS is usually described as a pyramid. And the reason it's a pyramid is because the bottom is the biggest part. And the biggest part is called Tier 1 interventions. And like I said before, it'd be great if kids would just learn everything the first time around and they didn't have any behavior problems or social emotional issues. But we all know that's the reality of classrooms, right? And so this Tier 1 is really about what do teachers do in the classroom during core instruction to actually make sure every kid, or most of the kids, get through. Now I think Chris talked about 80% of that. What we have in the system right now is that we don't have 80% of the kids at that level. And so what Steve was talking about is that we have a core instructional issue that we're working on, and a big part of that is really around Guaranteed Bible Curriculum. That's really the route that we're taking. But that Tier 1 is really 80%. If you look at Tier 2 there, it says less than 20%. If you're in Tier 2, what that means is you get targeted support as a student. And so where do they figure that out? It's in PLCs. So those Fridays, which is a gift of time, is great, but it does actually directly benefit kids. Because teachers during that time are really looking at student data, student performance, and they're saying, how can we actually target student support during that time? So, and then, sorry, I'm kind of reading that, so that's still. Then Tier 3 is less than 5% of the students, and that's where Chris is spending a lot of his time. And I was saying as a principal that you spend probably 90% of your time on 2% of the kids, right? And that's really what happens. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just that those kids need more than everybody else, and that's what we talked about with that group. So this umbrella really is the system, and we bring all these parts together, and it hopefully creates a system, not hopefully, hope's not the plan. It creates a system where we can really meet the needs of all kids. And we really do need them all. And I know that I've been in education a long time, and I think every mission statement I've ever had says we'll meet the needs of all kids. Well, you can't really meet it unless you have this. Because you can't cover everyone with a one-size-fits-all. And the last part of this element is really learner-driven and data-informed. We have to take a look at what kids are doing. If kids aren't performing, it's our fault. We can't blame them, can't blame the community, we can't blame COVID. It's our fault. So this is where we take responsibility. How do we do that? We take a look at student data. Recently, we've contracted with Homeroom. And Homeroom is what they call a data dashboard. And what it's allowing us to do is principals have met and trained with the Homeroom trainers, and they are choosing individual data points for them to look at. And then based on these data points, they make risk groups of kids. So they're actually looking in real time with grades, attendance, our screener, English, those kind of things. Sorry, it's really nasty. But they're looking at these real-time things, and then they're saying, who are the kids at risk? And now they're targeting those kids in a way that allows them to take a look at Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions. So this data point is very, very important for us. So that's how it all fits together. Without one of these elements, the whole thing falls apart. And so that's why I said when I started off, it's going to take us 5 years to really get to a place where all these elements are working together. Doesn't mean that we shirk our responsibility to the kids we have right now in our schools, because we have great elements that are bringing it there. We're actually putting systems in place today that are getting us to a place where we serve the same kid.
Just one thing real quick. One of the things we talked about earlier is the fact that we have a whole bunch of really good pieces. And right now, those puzzle pieces are kind of all over the place. And working with these guys here, it's about us bringing all those pieces together into a puzzle that actually creates a picture of success for our kids.
You didn't leave me on
But that, you know, we were talking about all the good work we've done over the past 5 years that I've been here. That can't go to, you know, in a handbasket. And so, but what we want to do is make sure we bring all those pieces together so it makes sense for kids.
First, I absolutely recognize all the work that's been done over the last years and the substantial leaps forward I feel that our districts have been making in supporting kids. This is the first time I think guaranteed viable education curriculum fits into the big picture for me. I think I asked, and like I need help understanding how this comes together and what it means for our students. So I appreciate this presentation and this view of it, and the holistic way that you're looking at the kids and figuring out ways to support them. I think two things for me, I can't wait to learn more and go on this journey with you. And also, I'm expecting and asking you to tell me as a board member how I can support this, because I think it'll make a big difference. So, my asking you moving forward, don't be shy. Don't be shy about saying yes to this support from me as a board member.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for all the hard work. I'm excited. I just repeat, whatever we can do to help you, please let us know. Let us help you get this accomplished. Let's get everything out the way so you can get to this.
And you did a very nice job answering my questions, and my questions were not about, is this, should we change this? I understand all of these are the cornerstones, but my questions were about how to recognize the big needs we have this year and next year, because as you've mentioned, core is not going to be the same these couple of years as it will be other times, because we have so many holes. And the one thing that Chris said that reminded me is, it's not just in the material, but in attendance. I mean, we have, you know, we have guidelines for attendance, but now we have quarantines, we have kids getting sick, so, I mean, we've had to make a lot of adjustments, and I'm glad that we're making adjustments, because every teacher knows, you know, you gotta adjust. But I like that we have these cornerstones to look, to push ourselves to, as well as remembering that we are in need of recognizing all the individual needs after all of this.
And one of the things that I appreciate is the fact that Aaron's here to help us pull all this together. Because, you know, we could all spend our time in our little own lanes, but we need to bring all those pieces together. And Aaron's been a great addition to the team.
Well, to your point, the graphic, Aaron was the one that produced that graphic. And when he produced that graphic, even for me who'd been here, I said, oh, there it is, I can see it. You know, and he has a mind that can put the picture there, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. And we really felt like when he did that, I said, that's it. You know, this is what we need to present to people and have them see it. And when we talked about the board report, I said, that's it. You know, because it says, it's right there. It's easy to understand, isn't it? And one of the things that is a challenge, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to us, is as we're trying to present this as all under one umbrella, we've lived in those silos for a while. So people are going to be, you know, we started with our principals, and we're working with their understanding. And as Aaron and I are now working with these elementary teams, we'll work with their understanding. There's going to also probably be a little bit of a pushback when we get to the guaranteed part of this, because for the years that we've allowed teachers a lot of autonomy by virtue of the fact that we didn't necessarily provide the guidance or the structure or whatnot like that. And now we're basically saying for this guaranteed part, we need you to come together and agree on the what. And when you agree on the what, you need to stick to it. And so there's going to be some work that we're going to be doing with that too, with teacher teams and in schools and stuff. It's going to be different. It's going to feel different. But we know that if we keep working our way through that, when we get to the other side, they're all going to look back and go, yeah, that's what we needed to do, that's where we needed to go. Because they're gonna see that, they're gonna see those gaps close with kids, and that's what builds their sense of efficacy, and when their efficacy goes up, so does kids' learning, so it works with each other.
I think the graphic is also, they can see the end.
Yeah.
They can see the beginning and see the end. They can shoot for, okay, we're gonna get to this point someday. I know this is why we get here. This is where we need to start, this is where we're gonna end up at.
And we know this is high stakes. I mean, there's nothing about, I would say, education that's not high stakes right now. I mean, kids are behind. They just are. That's the reality of the pandemic, but it's not an excuse not to really work towards getting every kid at grade level. And I think this is the best plan that we have. I can't think of anything better than what we're doing right now. And it doesn't mean we're going to abandon the kids that are in school today. For the future, this is not going to happen.
I want to thank you for this, actually just using that term right there. It's not an excuse. There's no excuse. And thank you. All the hard work, echoing what everybody else does. I love to see everything being brought together. So thank you. No excuses. I like that.
Princess Burgess has a question. It was so fun to say that. I had to.
That was really cool too.
Yes.
It's not a question, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that you guys said you're staying away from the one-size-fits-all sort of deal. And I really appreciate that because we do have a really diverse student population. And it's really important to note that with the different types of students that we do have, we need to make sure we're adjusting ourselves and advocating and representing those students that maybe are more diverse than others. I mean, that's not right, but yes, you get what I'm saying. I appreciated that you're adjusting yourselves and the plan to take into account everybody and not just one specific type of people.
We have to talk with our principals about the game of school, right? And the game of school used to be where kids would go to school and they learn the rules of the school, which were never posted, right? And they learn, I gotta turn stuff in at a certain time. Some teachers are nicer than others. You gotta make sure you ask questions this class, but don't raise your hand in that class, right? And so schools need to be not a place where kids go and learn the rules. It's a place where adults are working with kids to learn about the world. And that's really the difference in this plan. Thank you.
I agree with that a lot. And then I saw on your presentation it says there was no implemented plan for high school yet. In leadership class, after the homecoming stuff is settled down, we're actually going to try to start with the Are You Okay that you guys had written on the board. We're going to start trying to implement that.
I don't know. And I hope you have that.
Yeah, thank you.
During the presentation, I realized why I liked the umbrella so much as opposed to the triangle. And that is because everybody always assumes that Tier 1, they've got everything going. The people in Tier 1 have places where they're Tier 3. They have, and so we forget that everybody has their pluses, their weaknesses. And the umbrella shows that we're all human.
Is it okay if we use that? That's good, isn't it? I like it. We're going to use that pushing forward, Kathy.
And the other thing I had questions, Steve, when you were talking about what being agreed upon.
Yeah.
One of the things is that in the past, a lot of us remember when the state put a lot of money into providing training opportunities for teachers, like we used to have a reading specialist at OSPI, and you could go to classes that were goal 1, remember, and all that. And the state hasn't been doing that so much now, it seems like. And do we have the ability to start stepping up more to help people learn, the what of their content area?
Yeah, I think two things. I think one, we've actually watched some of our key people. Beth Crow would be one, Stephanie Freeze would be another that I think about, who are so passionate about this work that they've actually been investing their own personal time doing books and learning and stuff, so they're building a great level of expertise within our system. But in our conversation that we had yesterday with Alicia and Christy, some of their comments, similar to what you were saying, really raised that specter for us. Okay, what kind of professional learning do we need to provide so that we build that expertise, or bring in expertise, or go see expertise which was kind of the conversation we had with Ed this morning. And Ed basically said, you identify what you need, we'll make it happen. Because this is, you've said it a couple of times, this is critical work. And it's critical work for Aaron and I, particularly as we do this kind of stuff. We feel like that this is either do or die. And because we know how important it is, how critical it is. So with the support that we have, we'll find a way to do it. But you're exactly right on, is that we've got to build their expertise to understand this as well.
The thing I would emphasize and add to that is that we have really, really good teachers here. I mean, not just kind of okay, we have the best teachers here. And I think that unless we tap into that, I think we'd be doing the district a disservice to the kids as well. They're the ones that work with kids every single day, and experience does count for something. And I think that these teachers really have a lot to offer. And I think that if we provide the route and a system in which to work in, I think we're going to get something pretty good.
And we did that in past curriculum committee that we were on, and we used to do book studies, within our building, identify something you needed to do, and provide clock hours for it, because, you all need your clock hours. But I really love the graphics. I think that'll help a lot of people to understand.
We're gonna go off the norm, and if you have to make it quick as you do.
Oh, no worries. I'm probably the only parent here, but I love the idea of the umbrella thing. It's a great concept of how everything works, because when you swing the umbrella upside down, it just picks up everybody. And that's fantastic.
Use that too.
So, I love that thought, and that way everybody's all the way equal across the board. But what I didn't see in the whole thing is for those one students and stuff, and it's here and there is those high cap students that are above and beyond those tiers that you're looking at. I didn't see anything that caught those ones that can push them to be a little higher than, just sitting on the base level of what you're trying to accomplish, which means everybody needs to be at that grade level, move to the next level, which is fantastic. I think it's fantastic. It's a great way to go. But I'm looking at, there are a few students that are, extremely gifted in some aspects, and we got to try and catch them too with that umbrella scoop. Just kind of scoop them along and be like, hey, here, we're going to help you out too to pick you up at that level. That's the only thing I have.
That's one of the details of MTSS I didn't talk about, but when we talk about differentiation, for example, that doesn't mean we're just making things better for the kids that are struggling. You make it better for the kids that are ready to go on. Let's go. Okay. Let's grow. So it works both ways.
Okay. That's one of my questions that I had. That's all.
Yeah, I just wonder how it this, I'm super excited. There's multi-school jargon in here. And so my next question for you is, how do you, and don't answer this question, I'm not asking you to do that right now, but how do you show the parents in the community so that it resonates with them? And please do share.
Maybe you could help us identify the jargon as you see it from, and then we can work on that. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes it doesn't look like jargon is, right?
Right.
We're immersed in it. But yeah, if we could identify some of those pieces, yeah, we could make a public version of it.
Yeah,
Definitely. And I really think it should be.
I think this represents so much work, and it will be such an investment for the district and our students and our community that are all part of this, and so much work with the teachers and staff. That I really want our families to be on board and supportive and to see this work. Cool. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is the second reading of the policy. Any questions? You can't get a motion, no questions?
I motion to approve the second reading of 5515 BP before secondary tremendous.
Second?
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next thing is consent agenda. Okay. Kathy and myself, we're gonna go over it. but I'm gonna sustain on number 2, which is the Lions Club.
And
So that's my goal with that.
1, 3 is for personnel.
So we can get a motion. With the abstaining is given.
Motion to approve the consent agenda minus item 2 and minus item 4.
I'll second.
No, then you don't want to take them out. Okay. You don't want to take them out, you want to,
You want to do 1 through 4,
right?
and then you guys individually
We're
will
gonna-
stay.
yeah.
Or 1 through 7.
Okay, so-
Okay, motion to approve items 1 through 7 on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
First and second. I approve, I'm gonna extend on number 2.
And I approve that, but I'm going to abstain on number 4.
I approve items 1 through 7.
Approve 1 through 7.
Who's first? To the reps, got anything to report?
I mean, I can talk a little bit.
Oh,
Okay. So I don't have a lot to share, but just a little bit.
all right.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, homecoming did get postponed. That's okay. I honestly prefer it the way it is now because I am actually able to attend. And I wasn't originally. Just really sad about it. And it was going to be pretty sad. We also just had our national selection, which we all know. Hi, I'm the national princess. Super exciting. We also are currently doing our last 2 homecoming games this week for soccer and volleyball. Volleyball is tonight. We did a red out for soccer to show our support and a pink out during school. The pink out changed to a superhero night for volleyball tonight. What else did I want to touch on? Super exciting for the homecoming events coming next week. We do have the parade and the Olympics, like you guys mentioned, the game, and then the actual Friday Night Lights event. So we're really excited about that and thankful that we still get to have that, so I appreciate it. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
I don't really have much either, honestly. It's pretty much the exact same thing. I would say that I'm really excited for our Spirit Days next week. They're a little bit more untraditional than some of the other ones. It's a little bit more fun. Along with like the classic Jam a Day. What else do I have? I'm hoping to, after homecoming, I mentioned it earlier, start pushing forward some of the Are You OK stuff. I know we discussed a little bit last year, but then it was online, it was really hard to get anything going and rolling. But I know when I did some of the Are You OK stuff within my equestrian community, it really went over a success nationally, so I'm hoping I can start implementing that program into that umbrella. It's not the third one, but I keep pointing it there. The umbrella program that is up there.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, it's actually a mental health awareness program that originally came from Australia, but it's migrating over here, and it's about making those meaningful connections with others, so you have those connections with others as you grow up through life. It's more than just asking if they're okay, it's what you can do to help support them, and just making sure someone always has another person with them there, that like they can rely on and talk to, more than just an adult. So it's just making everyone feel at home and connected more.
Yeah, so student-led, an
Yeah.
initiative within the school, getting people connected with it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, that's all I really
Our next session is board comments. Any comments from the board?
I have one quick comment, and it happened kind of fairly early on from Mr. Aaron Lee. You made a comment that you had to go out of your way to make sure that you were at your daughter's senior night. And I acknowledge anybody who works in the school district, and one of the things that I just absolutely love about our superintendent
is that he asks you all to focus on your family. Don't forget about them. They support you when you do the hard work, and you need to be there for them. And the fact that you might have been someplace where you didn't feel like you could ask for that to be there makes me really happy that you felt like you could do that here. That's what Orting is about. Our community's love for our students, our staff, our community, and it just made me so happy. It's just one of the things that just sat here this whole meeting, and it's just, I just wanted to make sure and say that. All of our staff should feel free to ask for those things, that your family is important. If you can't be with your family, you're not going to be at your best for our students.
Amen.
Any other comments?